Where the Tide Turns Home. Part 1. The Arrival. The van from Nadi Airport wound through roads that didn't appear on most maps. Red dust. Sugarcane pressing close on both sides. April Jenkins had her face pressed to the window like a child, her locks pinned up under a wrapped scarf the color of turmeric, her notebook already open on her lap, even though her hands weren't writing anything. She was just feeling. First solo trip, she thought. 26 years old, and I finally stopped asking permission from people who weren't even in the room. She had booked the resort on a whim, which was how she made most decisions now. An algorithm had served her a video at 2 a.m. A Fijian man, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that seemed to start somewhere deep in his chest before it ever reached his face, walking barefoot through a property that looked less like a resort and more like someone had convinced paradise to sit still for a moment. The caption read, "We don't do luxury. We do real." She had clicked the link before the video finished. Saru was in the middle of an argument with a generator when the van pulled in. Not a heated argument. The kind of quiet, patient negotiation a man has with equipment he has fixed 17 times and will fix 17 more because replacing it isn't the point. The point is knowing something well enough to make it work. His cousin Tomosai leaned against the wall nearby, eating a mango and offering nothing useful. "Van's here," Tomosai said. "I see that. You've got grease on your face." "I know. There's a woman in it." Saru stood, wiped his hands on a cloth that didn't entirely help, and turned. Oh, he thought. That was all. Just oh. She stepped out of the van before the driver came around. She didn't wait to be helped. She just stepped onto the red earth of his property and looked around with her eyes slightly wide, like she was taking inventory of something important. She wore linen trousers the color of cream and a loose top that the breeze immediately began a conversation with. Her skin, and Saru had to remind himself to breathe, actually had to issue that instruction to his own body, was something between red clay and warm gold, catching the late afternoon light like the earth itself had decided to take a form it was proud of. Her locks hung heavy and magnificent past her shoulders, even half-pinned, and she moved like a woman who had learned, not long ago, that she didn't have to make herself smaller to fit through doors. She turned and found him looking. He didn't look away. Neither did she. Okay, April thought. The algorithm knew something I didn't. Beulah, Saru said, crossing the courtyard with his hand extended. His voice was even. Practiced hospitality mixed with something that was absolutely not practiced at all. "Welcome. I'm Saru. I run this place." April. She took his hand. Firm shake. Direct eye contact. "I can tell." "You can tell? You've got grease on your face and you're the only one who looks like they're actually in charge." She smiled, not a flirtatious smile yet, just an honest one. Observational. Like she filed things away quickly. Saru laughed. The real laugh. The one from his chest. Tomosai watched from the wall, still eating his mango, and thought, well, that's something new. Saru's housekeeper and surrogate aunt, Adi Vasatai, showed April to her beret, a traditional thatched cottage that sat 20 feet from a beach, so still it looked like a painting of a beach rather than an actual one. Flowers had been laid on the pillow. A small wooden bowl of fruit sat on the table. Through the window, the lagoon was every shade of blue that blue had ever wanted to be. April sat on the edge of the bed and opened her laptop. She had 3 client calls scheduled. A travel piece due for a platform in Amsterdam. A photography contract to review. She looked at the beach. She looked at the laptop. The piece can wait 2 hours, she decided, and walked straight into the water with her linen trousers rolled to her knees, shoes left behind without ceremony, notebook clutched to her chest like she might need to write down what the water felt like the moment it happened. She did as it turned out. Need to write it down. "Warm," she wrote, standing ankle-deep. "Like the ocean here actually wants you in it. Like it's been waiting." Part 2. The first dinner. Saru ran meals communally, long wooden tables under open-sided shelters, guests and staff eating together, the food coming from the garden and the water, and the knowledge of Adi Vasatai, who cooked with authority and no written recipes, and a running commentary on everything. April sat at the end of a table next to a Norwegian couple who were kind but exhausted from travel. She had her notebook beside her plate because she always had her notebook beside her plate. She was writing an observation about the way the palm torches moved when the wind changed when she noticed the empty seat across from her get pulled out. Saru sat down. "You don't usually eat with guests?" she asked, without looking up first. "I usually eat in the kitchen." "So, why aren't you in the kitchen?" He considered the question with more honesty than she expected. "The view is better out here tonight." She did look up then. He was looking directly at her when she did. "Don't smile," she told herself. She smiled. "Bold," she said. "Honest," he said. Adi Vasatai brought food to the table and paused long enough to look between them with the expression of a woman who has been waiting for something for a long time and is pleased to finally see it arriving. They ate. They talked. It wasn't small talk. April noticed that early, that Saru didn't reach for the easy, pleasant surfaces of conversation. He asked her what she was actually doing here, not as a challenge, but with the genuine curiosity of someone who wanted to understand the real answer. So she gave it to him. "I decided about 8 months ago that I was done building my life around a city that was convenient rather than chosen," she said. "I had an apartment, a lease, a plant that I was definitely killing slowly. And I thought, What am I protecting? The plant. She laughed. I let the lease go. Gave the plant to my neighbor. Put my work in the cloud, and my life in 2 bags, and I've been moving since. Do you miss it? The plant? Any of it? She thought about it genuinely. No, she said, and sounded slightly surprised by her own answer. That's the thing. I thought I would. But every place I've been, I feel more. She paused, searching. Like yourself? Saru offered. She pointed her fork at him. Yes, exactly that. He nodded slowly. Some people need walls to feel safe. Some people need horizons. Which are you? He looked at the ocean, invisible now in the dark but present in the sound and the salt of the air. I used to think walls. I built all of this. He gestured at the property around them. But I think I was building a horizon that I could stay inside. April was quiet for a moment. I want to write that down, she thought. I want to write everything he says down. After dinner, the Norwegian couple retired. 2 other guests drifted toward the bonfire further down the beach. Saru and April remained at the table, and no one asked them to move, and neither of them wanted to. Tomosai walked past at some point, glanced at the 2 of them deep in conversation, and changed his direction entirely without being asked, looping back through the kitchen to tell Adi Vasatai what he'd seen. Adi Vasatai said, "I-o," which meant yes in the way that implies I already knew. At some point, April wouldn't be able to say exactly when, Saru reached across the table and turned her notebook toward him to look at what she'd been writing during dinner. Not reading her private thoughts. Just looking at the fact of the notebook, the habit of it. You write everything down, he said. I forget things otherwise. What things? Good things mostly. The way something feels in the moment. I'm afraid of forgetting what things feel like. He turned the notebook back to her. His fingers were close to hers when he did it. Neither of them moved for a beat. Say something, she thought. Or don't. But decide. She turned her hand over, just slightly. An opening, not a declaration. He saw it. He didn't take the hand. Not yet. He was a patient man. But he did not pretend he hadn't seen it. I'll make sure you have things worth writing about, he said quietly. She exhaled slowly. That might be a dangerous promise. I'm a careful man. I don't think that's true, she said, and her voice was low and warm and there was nothing accidental about it. The torch near them flickered. The ocean kept its own counsel. Part 3. Little Gifts and Long Days. She woke to find a single frangipani flower on her windowsill that had not been there the night before. No note. She picked it up, turned it in her fingers, and put it behind her ear. The resort offered activities: kayaking the reef, a village kava ceremony, a guided mangrove walk with a local elder named Rata Kalidajabogi who is 80 years old and moved through the forest like water moves through stone, which is to say slowly and inevitably, and leaving everything changed. April signed up for all of them. At the kayak launch, there was a small insulated bag clipped to the bow of her kayak with a handwritten tag, for when you get hungry out there. Inside, sliced papaya, a small container of coconut yogurt, 2 pieces of cassava cake wrapped in banana leaf. She looked around. The resort staff member giving the safety brief was already talking and hadn't done it. No one was watching her. Saru, she thought, and something warm moved through her chest like the first current of a tide deciding which direction it wants to go. At the kava ceremony in the village, she sat cross-legged and quiet and respectful, and clapped once with her hands cupped the way Rata Kalidajabogi had shown her before she drank, and the village women around her exchanged looks of approval. Afterward, a girl of about 10 attached herself to April's side and spent an hour teaching her words in Fijian. Vinaka, the girl said. Vinaka, April repeated. Thank you, the girl translated. Vinaka, April said again, directed at the girl, and the girl beamed like she had given someone a gift. April wrote it all down. She came back to her beret in the late afternoon and found a small wooden carving on her doorstep, a turtle, smooth and small enough to fit in her palm, warm from sitting in the sun. Still no note. She held it for a long time. He doesn't announce himself, she thought. He just appears. In the food and the flower, and the things he leaves where I'll find them. Like he's learning the shape of me from a respectful distance and filling it with warmth. She put the turtle in her pocket. Then she went to find him. He was in the garden, deep in conversation with Samisa, the groundskeeper, about an irrigation problem. He had a pencil behind his ear and dirt on his hands, and he was laughing about something when she walked up. He saw her and the laugh didn't stop. It just shifted into something quieter, like a song moving from its loud verse into the part that means more. Vinaka, she said. He looked at the turtle visible at the edge of her pocket. You're learning. I have a good teacher. A 10-year-old in the village. Adi Makarita. He smiled. She teaches everyone who sits still long enough. The kayak bag, April said. The flower this morning. He didn't confirm or deny. He just waited. You're spoiling me, she said. I'm taking care of a guest. Is that what this is? It wasn't a question quite. She held his gaze with the steady, unhurried patience she'd learned from months of arriving in places alone, of being entirely comfortable in her own attention. He looked at her for a long, level moment. The afternoon light came down through the palm canopy and moved across her face and locks, and he thought several things simultaneously and kept all of them composed behind his eyes. She knows, he thought. She's always known. She's waiting to see what I do with it. Come to dinner, he said.
Beach.
Tonight. Just come. It wasn't an invitation that required deliberation. Okay, she said. Part 4. The beach, just them. Adi Vasitai set a small table at the water's edge, with the energy of a woman completing a mission she had assigned herself. You don't have to do all this, Saru told her. She agreed, and continue doing all of it. He looked at the table. 2 candles in glass holders. A low arrangement of something white and fragrant from the garden. The plates already warm from the kitchen. This is not how you feed a guest, he thought. This is how you feed someone who matters. He stood straighter, accepting the truth of what he was doing. When April arrived, barefoot, her locks loose now and falling in beautiful heavy ropes past her shoulders, wearing a dress the color of deep water that the night breeze immediately claimed as its own business, Saru understood what it was to see a person arrive somewhere and think. There. Not as a thought that required analysis. As a fact his whole body recognized before his mind had the language for it. He stood when he saw her, and it wasn't formal or practiced, it was just instinct. You cleaned up, she said. You're worth the effort. She held his gaze for a moment with a look that was warm and unhurried, and entirely aware of its own effect, then sat across from him. The torches were low. The water barely moved. Above them, the Fijian sky was doing everything it knew how to do, which was everything. Can I ask you something? April said, pouring her own water because she was always the kind of woman who poured her own water. Yes. Does this happen? With guests, I mean. Do you do? She gestured at the table, the torches, the night, the turtle she'd slipped into her dress pocket. This? No, he said plainly. Never. Never. She looked at him. Then why me? He was quiet for long enough that it was real thinking, not deflection. Because you walked onto my property and looked at it like it deserved to be looked at. Not like a backdrop. Like a real place. He paused. And because you looked at me the same way. She set her glass down. I looked at you because you're beautiful, she said, and her voice was even, direct, the way she was direct about everything. And because you looked back without apologizing for it. The ocean moved. I'm not sorry for anything, he said quietly.
Good, she said.
Neither am I. They ate slowly. They talked about his family, his mother Adilisha, who lived 20 minutes away and called him every morning, his father, gone 10 years, whose hand Saru had inherited along with the property and the particular stubbornness to keep building things that mattered, his 2 sisters, Basimika and Luisa, who both had opinions about the resort and his life and shared them freely, and without apology. They'll have opinions about me, April said. It wasn't a concern. It was an observation, the same tone she'd used for the ocean temperature, and the name of the plant Samisa had shown her that morning. They'll love you, he said. And then, hearing himself, they'll like you. When they meet. You. When, she noted. He picked up his glass. I said what I said. She laughed, the full laugh, the one she'd immoderate, the one that showed all of her, and he felt it like something unlocking in a room he hadn't known was locked. After dinner they walked. No direction decided. The beach curved and they curved with it, and at some point the resort's torches were out of sight, and it was just the moon and the sound of their feet in the wet sand and the occasional commentary of something unseen in the palms. April's hand was close to his. Had been for 100 meters. She closed the distance. He felt her fingers find his without ceremony, no hesitation, no performance, just a decision made and acted on, and he turned his hand over to hold hers properly, and they walked in silence for a while with the moon doing its considerable best. She's the one who reaches, he thought. She's the one who decides. I only have to be worth deciding toward. I should tell you something, she said. Tell me. I have no reason to go back. To the resort? To America. She stopped walking. He stopped with her. She turned to face him, the ocean moving dark and patient behind her, her locks lifting slightly in the sea wind. I've been moving for 8 months, and this is the first place I've arrived at and thought here. This is the first time I haven't already been thinking about the next place. He searched her face. That could be the beret, he said carefully. Or the beach. Or, Saru. Yes. I'm telling you I want to stay. The night was very quiet. He lifted his free hand and very slowly, with the patience of a man who understood that some moments only come once and that rushing them is a form of disrespect, touched one of her locks where the wind had moved it across her cheek, and tucked it back. His hand stayed at her jaw for a moment. She turned her face slightly into it. There, she thought. There he is. The patience is not distance. It never was. Then stay, he said. Part 5. The thinking room. There was a room. Not a secret exactly, but not advertised, tucked at the back of the main building, behind the kitchen, where a door that looked like it led to storage actually opened into a small covered veranda that faced a bend in the creek, invisible from the beach and the guest bears. Saru used it sometimes to think, or to not think, which was a different and necessary thing. There was one chair, a small table, and overhead the creek sounds and the frogs, and the kind of dark that cities never get dark enough to produce. He showed it to her on her 3rd day, when a midday rain had moved in from the sea, and was making the usual outdoor spaces temporarily impractical. My thinking room, he said. She stepped in and looked around slowly, the way she looked at everything, with the full weight of her attention. You don't tell guests about this.
No.
But you're telling me. Yes. She looked at him over her shoulder. The rain was loud on the corrugated roof, and the air had gone green and cool, and alive with petrichor, and something that had no name. Her locks were damp at the edges from walking through the leading edge of the rain, and she smelled like the resort's frangipani soap and something warmer underneath it, something that was just hers, and Saru was finding it increasingly difficult to be practical around any of it. I'm becoming one of your projects, she said. The teasing was warm and certain and deliberate. I don't have projects, he said. I have intentions. She turned fully to face him now, leaning one shoulder against the wall. What are your intentions, Sarasamo? He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and looked at her with the frank patience that was, she had decided, the most appealing thing about him, the total absence of performance. He wasn't arranging his face. He wasn't managing her expectations. He was simply present, and the room felt full of him. To give you a reason to keep choosing this place, he said. And to see what you make of it once you do. That's long-term thinking. I'm a long-term man. She pushed off the wall and crossed toward him, and the space between them went from distance to conversation. She was close enough now that the warmth between them was something neither of them could argue was incidental. I want to write about this, she murmured. About all of this. The resort. The people. You. She caught herself and didn't look away from the catching. If that's okay. Write whatever you need to write. His voice had found its lower register. Just make sure you write what's true. I always do. She put one hand flat against his chest, deliberate, certain, unhurried, and felt his heartbeat, which was not as composed as his face. His breath changed. There you are, she said softly. He covered her hand with his, pressing it gently to his chest, holding it there like it was something he wanted to keep. His other hand rose slowly to the side of her face, his thumb at her cheekbone, his fingers warm against her jaw, and he waited, patient, present, entirely certain, and entirely deferring to her, until she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was the kind of kiss that knows what it is. Certain and unhurried. No performance, no testing. Just arrival. He kissed her back with the patience of a man who had been waiting for exactly this, and intended to honor every moment of it. The rain made the roof sing. The creek talked to itself in the green dark. Outside, the resort continued its business of being real and present and alive, and inside the thinking room, two people who had not been looking for this had found it anyway, the way the tide finds the shore, not by force, but by the simple, irresistible nature of what it is. Part 6. Stolen Moments. It became a language between them. A look across the communal dinner table that lasted a beat longer than hospitality required. His hand at the small of her back when he was directing her attention towards something in the garden. There, and then gone before it could be read as anything but courtesy, though it was read as something else entirely, by both of them. The way she'd appear in the doorway of whatever room he was working in and say nothing for a moment, just stand there with her notebook, and he'd look up and they'd hold the silence between them like something warm. Mosai cataloged all of it.
He was not subtle about this.
You're staring, Sarah told him one afternoon. I'm observing, Mosai said, eating something from his hand. There's a difference. There isn't. She fixed the intake form on your website. Sarah looked up. What? The booking form. The drop-down menu was broken on mobile. She fixed it. I saw her on her laptop at breakfast. Mosai ate another bite. She didn't tell you. Sarah was quiet. She just fixed it, he thought. She saw something that needed doing and she did it because this place matters to her. He felt it somewhere below his ribs, a warm, specific pressure that had no precise name. She's already building something here. There was an afternoon, 6 days in, when a couple from the city arrived for a day visit and managed to get slightly lost on the reef trail. April, who had done the trail twice already, went with Samisa to help find them. It took 2 hours and involved some confident navigation through a section of mangrove that the trail technically did not include. She arrived back at the resort with mangrove mud to her knees, her locks wrapped in a cloth, and an expression of complete satisfaction. Saru was waiting at the trailhead. Everyone okay? He asked. Everyone is fine. A little shaken. Adi Vasatai is feeding them. You didn't have to go. I know the trail. She looked at him. And it was useful. You're going to be useful to everything, aren't you? It came out softer than he intended. She heard it. I intend to be, she said, and the way she said it was about more than the trail, and they both understood that. She walked past him toward her beret and her shower, and at the last moment she glanced back over her shoulder, just a glance, just enough, and he stood at the trailhead in the afternoon heat and thought, I would rearrange my whole life without hesitation. He had not told her this yet.
He was a patient man.
But he was also a decided one. That evening, she came to the thinking room and found a second chair. She stopped in the doorway and looked at it. Then she looked at him, already in his usual place against the wall. You brought a chair, she said. You keep coming here. You keep leaving the door unlocked. That too. She sat. He sat. The frogs began their evening argument, and the creek moved through the dark, and the air smelled like rain that had already happened and rain that was still deciding. I want to show you something tomorrow, he said. Where? Up the ridge. There's a place my father used to take me. You can see the whole bay. Both headlands. The whole horizon, she said. The whole horizon. She turned to look at him in the low light of the room. His face in the dark was the face of a man who was not managing anything, not performing anything, not holding anything back except the one thing he was saving for the right moment, which she could see in the careful steadiness of him, and which she found, somehow, more compelling than any urgency could have been. She reached across the space between the two chairs and took his hand. He turned it over and held it. "Tell me something real," she said quietly. "Something you don't tell guests." He was quiet for a moment.
"I've been lonely," he said.
"Not in a way I knew what to do with. This place is full of people, and I love all of it, and I've been lonely."
He paused.
"Until about 6 days ago." The frogs continued their consensus. She tightened her hand on his. 6 days ago. When the van came in, she exhaled slowly, like something she'd been holding had been given permission to release. He says the thing, she thought. He just says the true thing. "I walked onto your property," she said softly, "and I thought, I'm staying." I didn't know what that meant yet, but I thought it immediately. "Your bags are still by the door," he said. "I know." She looked at him. "I'm working on that." He raised her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, slow, deliberate, the gesture of a man who means what he does, and she felt it move through her like the first warm wave of a tide coming in. "Take your time," he said. She looked at the side of his face in the dark for a long moment, committing it. Then she rose from the chair and moved to his, lowering herself beside him in the space that wasn't quite enough space, and was exactly enough space, and leaned her head against his shoulder, and he put his arm around her, and neither of them said anything for a long time, because there was nothing that language could improve. Part 7. The Ridge. In the morning, he took her up the ridge. It was a real walk, not a resort activity with a brochure and a safety brief, but a proper climb through wet forest, her boots muddy and his machete clearing the one overgrown section near the top, and she kept up without complaint and kept asking questions about the plants, about the birds, about the names of things, and he answered all of them, and she wrote none of it down because her hands were needed for the climb, and she was trusting her memory, which felt like an act of faith in the
permanence of this.
At the top, the whole world opened. Both headlands. The bay below like something God had been proud of. The reef visible in bands of color from pale jade to deep navy. The resort, small and real and rooted, at the water's edge. April stood at the edge of the ridge, and was silent for a long time. "My father brought me here when I was 7, Saru said. He said, 'This is what you're keeping.'" He stood beside her, close but not touching. Not the buildings. Not the bookings. This. She didn't look at him yet. She was still looking at the bay. "He sounds like someone worth inheriting from," she said. He was. Now she looked at him, and the morning light on the ridge was the best light. The light that showed everything and softened nothing, and she held his gaze in it, without flinching. "I want this," she said. "All of this. The view and the work and the thinking room and the community dinner and Audie Macarita teaching me plant names."
She paused.
"And you. I want you. I'm telling you clearly, because I think you deserve that, and because I don't do things halfway, once I've decided." He looked at her for a long moment. She said it, he thought. She walked up a ridge in the morning and she said the true thing out loud, and she is standing in the best light holding nothing back, and she is magnificent, and I have been waiting for this without knowing I was waiting. He stepped toward her and took her face in his hands, his thumbs at her cheekbones, his palms warm against her jaw, and he kissed her with everything he'd been patient about, thorough and certain and unhurried, the kiss of a man who has no intention of stopping anything that is going this well. She kissed him back with both hands in his and the whole bay below them and no audience except the horizon, which had always, she thought, been the point. Part 8. The family. Audie Lisha arrived on a Saturday with a container of Daruka curry and an agenda she had not disclosed. She found April in the garden with Samisa, learning the names of the plants and writing them down in both Fijian and English in her notebook, her locks piled on her head because the morning was warm, her feet bare in the garden soil. Audie Lisha stood at the garden's edge and watched for a moment. She is in the earth of this place, she thought. Already. She is in it like she belongs. April looked up, saw the older woman, and stood. "Oh, Beulah. I'm April." "I-oh," Audie Lisha said, in the voice of a woman receiving confirmation of something she already understood completely. She looked at the notebook, the careful notation, the obvious interest. "You're learning our plants. Samisa is teaching me. I hope that's okay." Audie Lisha looked at Samisa. Samisa looked at the middle distance. She looked back at April. The locks, the careful watchful eyes, the notebook pressed to her chest, the turtle carving visible in her pocket, the garden soil on her feet, and made her assessment in the thorough way of a mother who has been paying attention for 38 years. "Come and eat," Audie Lisha said. "I brought enough." Saru found them in the kitchen an hour later, his mother and April sitting together at the prep table, the curry distributed, Audie Vasatai eating standing up as she always did, and all three women laughing at something he had not heard, the laughter of women who have found each other's frequency and are enjoying the range of it. He stood in the doorway. April caught his eye over his mother's shoulder, and her expression was warm and pleased and slightly triumphant. "Your mother is wonderful," she mouthed. His chest did something complicated and complete.
"I know," he mouthed back.
"And then, I told you." Her eyes crinkled. She turned back to his mother and said something that made Lisha laugh again, and Saru stood in his kitchen doorway and understood that some rooms, once they have the right people in them, are never quite the same size again. Vasimika and Luisa arrived together the following weekend because they had coordinated, which they would deny. They were 28 and 31 respectively, and they were surgical in their curiosity, which they dressed up as hospitality, with varying degrees of success. "You're the one writing about the resort?" Vasimika asked at dinner. "I'm writing about Fiji," April said. "The resort is part of it." "Which part?" April held the pause just long enough, and her eyes moved briefly to Saru at the other end of the table.
"The best part," she said.
Luisa looked at Vasimika. Vasimika looked at her curry. "She's been teaching herself Fijian," Saru offered from the other end of the table. "Adi Makarita," April said. "And Samisa. And honestly Adi Vasatai, when she's in a patient mood." "I am always patient," Adi Vasatai called from the kitchen. "She is not always patient," April said quietly to Vasimika, and Vasimika pressed her lips together hard to prevent the smile and failed entirely. Later, in the kitchen, doing dishes in the particular intimacy of women after a meal. "I like her," Luisa said. "I Vasimika agreed. She looked at him when she said it. "About the best part." "I know. She's staying." "I know that too. Have you seen his face when she says something unexpected?" Vasimika smiled into the dish she was drying. "He looks like himself," she said. "He looks like he did before the resort got heavy. Like he did when he was younger." She set the dish down. "She gives him that." Luisa was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said. "He's been carrying it alone long enough." Tomosai had known from the mango. He told the story at every opportunity from that point forward, with increasing embellishment, and no one stopped him because the core of it was true. Part 9. The life in her bags. On her 12th day, April opened her laptop on the veranda of her beret and sent an email to her subletter in Nairobi and another to a storage facility in Accra that held 3 boxes of books and some objects she was sentimental about. A carved bone comb from her grandmother, a stack of journals going back 7 years, her father's old compass, and arranged to have them shipped to an address that was not, specifically, anywhere yet. She looked at the Accra email for a moment after she sent it. "That's the last tether," she thought. "Everything else has been cloud for 8 months. These were the last things I left somewhere to come back to." She felt the weight of it and the lightness of it simultaneously, the way a boat feels when the last line is cast off, unmoored, which is also free. "I'll find them somewhere. And somewhere will be here." She updated her website bio. "Currently, Fiji. Indefinitely." She looked at it. She published it. Saru found her that evening in the thinking room. She'd started going there on her own in the afternoons, and he had not told her to stop and she had not asked if she should, because they were both past that kind of negotiation. It was hers as much as it was his now, which felt, to him, like the most natural thing that had happened in the room in years. She was writing. He sat on the floor because the 2 chairs were a recent development and there were still evenings when the floor was right. "I arranged to have some things shipped," she said, without looking up. "From where?" "Accra. 3 boxes. My real things." She kept writing. "I don't know the address yet, but I thought I should have them close." He was quiet. She is putting down roots, he thought. Not all at once. In her way. In boxes shipped from Accra, in garden soil on her feet, in plant names in 2 languages in a notebook. "I have a guest checking in Monday," he said. "She runs a design firm." She asked about working space. "You don't have a proper workspace," April said. It was an observation, not a criticism.
"No."
"You should." She still didn't look up. "The room near the reception has the right light. Internet's stable there. You'd need a proper desk, a few outlets added, a way to partition it, so it feels intentional." "I know. That's your next project." He leaned his head back against the wall. "I thought you said I didn't have projects." "I said you have intentions." She looked up. "But you have projects. I'm watching you run this place. You have about 6 projects at any given moment." She showed him the notebook. "I started one for the workspace." She'd sketched it out. Layout, furniture placement, a list of what different guests might need, and when, the natural light morning versus afternoon, the electrical requirements, the soundproofing of the door. 3 different use cases mapped and considered, with notes in the margins about cost and materials available locally. He looked at the sketch for a long time. She just does it, he thought. She sees the thing, and she builds the thing. Not because he asked her to, because this place matters to her, and she acts on what matters. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I wanted to." She tucked the notebook closed and looked at him steadily. "This place matters. You've made something real here. Not a backdrop, a real place, like you told me the first night." She held his gaze. "I want to be part of what makes it more real." He was across the small room in 2 movements, pulling her to her feet and kissing her before the notebook had fully settled, and she laughed into it, surprised and pleased, and kissed him back. "I'm going to need more chairs," he said against her mouth. Eventually, she agreed, and kissed him again. Part 10. What the tide brings in. 3 weeks in, the Norwegian couple came back. They had, they said, been thinking about it since they'd left. Could they book 2 weeks? They had both taken leave. The design firm guest extended by 4 days and set up a working arrangement with Saru that would bring her back quarterly. The piece April had been writing for the Amsterdam platform ran, and the engagement was unlike anything her editor had seen from a travel piece in 2 years. The comments section read like a collective exhale. I have been looking for this. How do I get there? Is there availability? The resort's booking calendar, already healthy from Saru's online campaign, extended its waitlist by 11 weeks. Saru looked at the numbers and then at April, who was on her laptop at the new desk in the reception workspace, her locks pinned up, her feet tucked under her in the chair.
You know the piece did this, he said.
The place did this, she said, without looking up. I just showed people where to find it. He crossed the room and leaned against the doorframe and looked at her in the morning light and thought, she made the workspace and she filled it. She is already in the bones of this. I want to ask you something, he said. She looked up. Not about the resort. He paused, choosing.
About you.
About what this is. She closed the laptop. You're being careful, she said. I told you, I was a careful man. You also said I was wrong about that. I said, I wasn't sure. He crossed to her chair and crouched in front of it eye level, his hands on his knees. I want you to stay. Not as a guest. Not as someone who is staying indefinitely. I want you here the way I'm here. I want to build this with you. He held her gaze. You don't have to decide today. You don't have to decide anything. I just wanted to say it plainly. She looked at him for a long moment. He says the thing, she thought again. He always says the true thing. She reached forward and took his face in her hands, her thumbs at his jaw, and he went still under her hands the way the bay went still in the early morning. Saru, she said. Yes. I ship my boxes here. He searched her face. I put your address, she said. 3 weeks ago. She smiled, and it was the full smile, the one that showed all of her. I was waiting for you to ask. He laughed, the real laugh, the one from his chest, and she pulled him forward and kissed him, and he kissed her back with the patience and the certainty of a man who is everything he intended and intends to keep it. Epilogue. What she wrote. The piece ran first on her own platform, then was picked up by 3 publications she hadn't expected. She titled it, Where the Tide Turns Home. There is a kind of resort that is not a resort. It does not want you softened and removed from the world. It wants you present. It wants you to taste the food and know what it came from. It wants you to sit with strangers who become something else before the week is out. It wants you to arrive carrying whatever you carry and leave carrying something different, something you don't entirely have the words for yet. Saru Samo built this place with his father's hands and his own stubborn heart. He runs it in bare feet. He argues with the generator in the mornings and eats dinner with his guests in the evenings and puts frangipani flowers on windowsills before anyone is awake. His community loves him with the easy, unperformative love of people who have watched a man be consistently himself for a long time. He will tell you this place is not about luxury. He will say, we do real. He means it. I have watched him mean it every day. I came here for a week. I am still here. My notebooks are full. My bags are still packed. They are always still packed. The habit of 8 months and the nature of who I am, but they have stopped waiting by the door. They have settled against the wall of a beret 20 feet from a lagoon that wants you in it, and they are, I think, as close to home as bags can be. 3 boxes are being shipped from Accra. They will arrive at an address I know by heart now. The turtle fits in my palm. The frogs start at dusk. Audie Macarita has taught me 47 words and is not finished. The thinking room has 2 chairs. The ocean here, I wrote on the first day, feels like it's been waiting. I know now that I was the one who was waiting. April Jenkins. Currently, Fiji. Indefinitely. In the kitchen, Audie Vasatai read the piece on the resort tablet, said, I-O, and went back to cooking. She had known from the first dinner. She had known from the way April had turned her hand on the table. To Mosai sent it to both sisters with a single message. I saw it coming from the mango. Vasimika replied, we know. Then, she's good for him. Then, don't tell him I said that. Louisa replied, tell him. Audie Lisha printed the piece out, which required effort, and 2 phone calls to her daughter Vasimika for technical assistance, and put it on her wall, next to a photograph of Saru's father standing in front of what was then just a cleared plot of land and a plan. He would have loved her, she thought, looking at the photograph. He would have seen exactly what she is. Saru read the piece once, in the thinking room, in the dark, with the creek talking outside and the frogs at full volume and the smell of rain that had not yet decided to arrive. He sat with it for a while. Then he went to find her. She was on the beach, barefoot, at the edge of the water, her notebook in her hands but not open, just held, the way she held it when she was living something rather than writing it. The moon was doing what the moon does here, which is everything. He walked to her and stood beside her, and she leaned into him without looking, like she had always known where he was in the dark, and he put his arm around her, and they stood at the edge of the water where the tide turns. Vinaka, he said quietly. She looked up at him. For what? For seeing this place. He looked at the bay, the headlands, the horizon his father had shown him from the ridge. For writing it true. She was quiet for a moment, the water moving at their feet, the resort warm and lit behind them, and the whole dark world ahead. Vinaka, she said back. For building something worth seeing. The tide came in. And, where the tide turns home. Written for the horizon people. For the ones whose life is in their bags and their hearts. For the ones who stopped asking permission from people who weren't in the room.